ישלח עזרך מקודש מציון יסודך יזכור כל מנכסיך וילעש וידש נסתלה תן לך חרבך וכל עצתך ימלא נעננה בתשובתך ושם אלוהינו נתגאל ימלא אדוני כל משלחך אתה ידעת כי יש אדוני משיח יענהו משמי קודש בגבורת ישע ימיני אלה ברכב ואלה בסוסים אנחנו בשם אדוני אלוהינו נזכר. Hey, my part of no follow and achnu kamle when he said that the Yeshi Amalach Yaneinu v'Yoim Kareinu. And we go to chapter 150. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Abakatri, hallelujah, Berkia Uzay, hallelujah, Big Barais, hallelujah, Karem good loy, hallelujah. Mesechta Shofar, hallelujah, Benebel Bechiner, hallelujah, Beseifa Mach, hallelujah, Minim Vugab, hallelujah, Betzil Zalesham, hallelujah, Betzil Zalesarua, Koil and Neshamat, hallelujah, hallelujah. And going over here, chapter 55 of Tehillim is very connected to today's day, the 10th of Kislev, the arrest and liberation of the Mitteler Rebbe. And today is the first chapter. First chapter of today's Tehillim is chapter 55. And in the middle, we have the words, Pada v'shalom, Hashem redeemed me in peace. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. So let's go from the middle of this chapter. Pada v'shalom nafshi mikravli, ki v'rabim hayu imadi, Yishmael v'yanem, v'yoshiv kadem sela, asherin chalifas lamai, v'la yadu alayhim, shalach yadav v'shleima, v'chilo v'risa, yichal kamach ma'is pi v'krav libay, rakod v'arav nishemen, v'hema v'sichais, ha'shechadnai yehavecha, v'yichak aleka, v'yitin la'ilam, v'yitla tzadik, Yatalim terdim v'ershachas, and shizam mirmal yachsi meim v'ani eftach bach. Means I would trust in you. We'll continue with the Gemara.
Is it 55, you said?
55, yeah. First chapter of today's Tehillim for the day of the month, Yom Yud. The Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe, both of them, when they were redeemed from prison, they were in the middle of saying Tehillim, and they were given the news they were going free. They were both saying this pasuk, Pada b'shalom nafshi, Hashem redeems my soul in peace. And we're up to the Gemara Mesechta Megillah, Daf Chaf, Amud Aleph, about 12 lines on the bottom. Veloy malin, you cannot give a bris milah by night. A bris milah must only be done during the day. You have an art scroll, it is 20a2. The chsiv, as it is written in the Torah, how do we know that a bris milah must be performed only during the day, after sunrise? And in sunrise itself, the best time to perform a bris is after Netzachama, which in Pittsburgh today will be at 7:14 a.m. The chsiv, as it is written, Vayoim hashmini yimol, on the 8th day, you shall circumcise your children. Hashem is telling. It's in Parshas Kedoshim, talking about the halachas of a woman who gives birth and how long she becomes tamei, and it says by Yom Hashmini, on the 8th day you have to give a bris. Since the Torah uses the word Yom, which means day, from there we learn that you have to give a bris specifically during the daytime. Now, even, for example, if a bris is late, you might think to yourself, a bris milah, Tosfos explains, is a very strict mitzvah. Mm-hmm. In general, the only mitzvahs in the Torah that have a punishment are called mitzvahs loisaseh, negative mitzvahs. Those are the mitzvahs that could get a punishment, either malchus, lashes, or kares, the soul is cut off from its source and one dies young, etc. There's only two mitzvahs aseh, only two positive mitzvahs in the Torah, that if one does not do them, they receive kares, they receive punishment of they pass away young, before the age of 50 or 60, plus the neshama is cut off in the world to come. Only two positive mitzvahs, because in general, they don't give out punishments for not doing something, for being passive. Usually punishment is for doing something proactive. For example, if someone ate not kosher food, that's when a bezdin will give out a punishment. The two mitzvahs, which are positive mitzvahs, which if one does not do them, that they get a punishment. One of them is a mitzvah of Korban Pesach, bringing a sacrifice, Korban Pesach, on Pesach that all Jews must bring. The other one is a bris milah, that if someone does not have a bris, they also receive kares. Now it's interesting, they only receive it in the world to come, not in this world, because it's something that a person could always fix. If you didn't receive a bris yet, you could always fix it and get a bris later on. But after they passed away without a bris, so then they could get kares in the world to come. Now, being that it's such a severe mitzvah, that it's the only positive mitzvahs, which is that we do today, which has kares, you might think to say that you should get a bris the first moment possible. So let's say somebody was born on Shabbos. And then, if the baby is born on Shabbos, it's so important to get a bris, we even give a bris on Shabbos, correct? Mm-hmm. However, let's say for whatever reason, the baby was not able to have a bris on that Shabbos. You might think to yourself to say, since the bris is so important, we should do it the first possible moment. So as soon as it's Matzah Shabbos, Saturday night, let's have a bris. Let's say there's no knife within the Eruv, and the Moel couldn't do the bris because it's within, it's not possible to bring a knife to do the bris with on Shabbos. You might think, let's do it Matzah Shabbos, Saturday night, the first possible opportunity. So here, the Torah tells us that it must be done by Yom, only by day. If someone had a bris done by night, they are not Yosef, not fulfilled their obligation of having a bris. And even the Ramah, Moshe Israelis, who all Ashkenazim go according to, says they must have a toughest down bris. They must do a drop of blood for a bris afterwards. There are certain situations, and I have it here on the screen, or I took it off the screen already, where it's possible that according to halacha, somebody needs a bris even before they're 8 days old. For example, a child of a shifcha, somebody bought a Jewish, a Jewish person bought a non-Jewish servant, and becoming an Evet Kanani, they have to get a bris on the day they're bought, even if they're less than 8 days old.
Jewish.
Not completely Jewish, correct.
So, however, you don't have an example of a full Jew.
Correct, but there are examples. There are times when a bris is sometimes obligated to be given before the 8th day. So one might think to themselves, okay, a bris on time on the 8th day. The Torah says Shmoinas Yamim, the 8th day. On the 8th day, one shall circumcise. What happens if it's not on the 8th day? Let's say it's a bris on the 9th, 10th, or 11th day. The child is yellow or jaundiced, and they cannot get a bris, or there was no mother around, or someone who's coming from a country where they were not allowed to have a bris, and then later on, you might think they should have a bris even by night on the first available opportunity.
One could have it maybe the eve of the 8th day, which would still be the 8th day.
Correct. You might think so.
You would think.
Right. So that's why the Torah must tell us that if one had a bris by night, it is not counted. You must have a bris only by day. If one did have a bris by night, you must have a toughest on bris, again, a drop of blood for the bris on the day after. If a child has had a bris early, there's two reasons why somebody would have a bris early. For whatever reason, let's say the child had a bris early and they have to redo the tapastam bris, the blood of the bris. If a child had a bris done, let's say in the hospital, not by a male, was done by a non-Jew, could the bris, so the bris is obviously not valid. Mm-hmm. But let's say it's a time of danger, right? And the only person they could find who agreed to do a bris was, let's say, the Muslim male, right? Yeah. The famous joke that goes, on Matzah Shabbos, we say, Hamalach Goyal Oisi. During the Yitin Lecha, the angel redeemed me. Mm-hmm. And there was one time a city where there was no Jewish male, and the only one who knew what to give a bris, to be a male, was the local priest and Galach. And later on, the child was growing up, and the father of the baby who had the bris and the priest met again, and they said, "How's your son doing?" Haven't seen him since since I gave the bris. He says everything is fine. The only thing is, B'matzah Shabbos, instead of saying Hamalach Hagal Eloisi, the angel has redeemed me. He says Hagala Hamoy Eloisi, the priest which circumcised me.
Now this is just a joke, right?
Yes, correct. But if a bris was done by a non-Jew before the time, and this could happen nowadays with in more ways than one. So it really depends. What's the reason why one must redo the bris if the bris was done by night? One must give a drop of blood for the bris. Is it because it was not a bris at all and you must give a kosher bris? In that case, you would the bris by the non-Jew is not considered to be a bris at all. Or was it a valid bris, just it was not done according to the parameters of the Torah? And as the Rebbe explained, there's three different parts of a bris. There's giving a bris milah. One should have the mitzvah done of bris milah, and the one should not have an arla. And one should be, the difference is if one is born without an arla, they still need a bris. If one is born with two arlas and only cut one off. Another discussion over here is, when do we do the bris? Today is a bris taking place starting at 11 a.m. or 12 p.m.
Oh, here?
No, somewhere else in another place.
Wow.
So when should he do the bris? We said before that you should definitely do it Zmanim after Netzachama, after sunrise, after 7:14 a.m. today. Shouldn't be done before that. It's kosher if it's done after Alois, after it starts to get light. It says Vayashkem Avram b'boker. Avram woke up in the morning. So it's a mitzvah to do things zrizim makdim in the mitzvahs. Do things as soon as possible. Even if later on you could have a large crowd, still it's better to do things earlier as opposed to doing things later with a large crowd. Davening is always better to daven earlier, even if it'll be a small minyan, as opposed to davening later, even if you're going to have a large minyan. If someone's traveling and they could even daven now by themselves on the road, or they know they get to their destination, it will be later, but they'll have a minyan. In that case, Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch that you should wait till he gets to the large to the place where you daven with the minyan. So Chassam Sofer, he's the son of Chassam Sofer, the Rav in Pressburg, which he brought down. They wrote to him that in the city of Lublin, it's in a city in Poland, that they push off the bris to later on during the day in order to have a long crowd, to have a large crowd, to do it mitzvah, with in a beautiful way. And he says, yes, he could defend it, but better they should always do it earlier. Kiddush Levana, for example, sanctifying the new moon. It says that it's better to do it as soon as possible, even though Matzah Shabbos, you could do it perhaps with a larger crowd, better to do it as soon as possible. We blow the shofar by Shachris on Rosh Hashanah. In order to do it, Zrizim Makdim LaMitzvah, so do it as soon as possible, even though by Musaf many times could be a larger crowd. Hallel, we say after Shachris, not after Musaf, for the same reason. Zrizim Makdim LaMitzvah, to do mitzvahs earlier. However, it says, Avram gave himself a bris in the middle of the day. He wanted everyone to see. The middle of the day means midday, 12 o'clock. He wanted as large of a crowd to know that he had a bris as possible. So therefore, you could, if one wants to make a bris later in the day to have a large crowd, we could see that, even from Avram Avinu. There's a famous moel in Crown Heights. His name is Rabbi Shane. He's done over 25,000 brisim over his life. He's been my moel of many people. And he has actually many amazing stories with the Rebbe, personal stories.
Your moel, he did your...
He was my bris. My bris was in Crown Heights, and he was a moel by my bris as well.
So, when you were 8 days old.
Correct. Yeah, I was 8 days old. I don't remember anything of it. After the bris, I couldn't walk for a year.
That's a problem.
As far as me, it's a shaila if I could have it 8 days old because I was yellow baby, but
yeah.
It's paskin that I could have it when
8 days. Interesting. Your grandfather was probably a moel, right? So your grandfather was a moel, right?
No,
he was a shechet. Oh, so you didn't want him doing the bris. So there was. Morning, Yossi. How are you, Yossi? Thank you for joining. Label for joining. So Rabbi Shane.
Morning, Rebbe.
Morning. It was one Sunday where he was doing a bris, and his custom at that time was if he's doing a bris for anyone, any family, he would try bringing the family to dollars by the Rebbe that Sunday before the bris. So one time he was doing a bris for a Bukhari family in Queens. In the Bukhari community, the bris is a day-long affair. It's they hire a hall and they hire this and that. And so he told the father of the child, today you're making a bris, you have to come to dollars by the Rebbe that day. And as well, he was doing another 2 bris in that day in Crown Heights on that day. So he made 1 bris in the morning, and then he brought all 3 the fathers of all 3 families who were making a bris that day. He brought them to dollars by the Rebbe, and he said they're making a bris today. And the Rebbe gave him all a dollar, and there was as a bracha, and the bris should be ida bismanai, the bris should be in the right time. And it was in the winter months when Shkia, sunset, is very early. And of course, like we're learning in this Gemara, a bris has to be done by day. You can't do it after sunset. After Mincha, the bris for the 2 families in Crown Heights went well, and the 3rd bris was supposed to be starting at 4 o'clock in Queens. There's a neighborhood there called Forest Hills. That's where the bris was. Now, after Mincha, every day by the Rebbe, Mincha was exactly at 3:15, winter, summer. And after Mincha, the Rebbe that day said a sikha. Sometimes you would never know in advance. The Rebbe would just say a sikha after Mincha. And so Mincha, let's say, is over about 3:30, and the Rebbe started saying a sikha. And the sikha was very long, over an hour. So about 3:30, the Rebbe saying a sikha, till about 4:30. He has to get to Queens. Shkia is about 4:50. Right? He has to make it, he has to get to his car, he has to make it to Queens, he has to have the bris done before Shkia, before sunset. And anyways, he thinks he should leave the sikha of the Rebbe early, but he thought to himself, the Rebbe saw, this morning went by the Rebbe for dollars, and the Rebbe the Rebbe knows I'm doing a bris for these 3 people. The Rebbe sees me here by the sikha right now. So the Rebbe knows I'm by the sikha. And the Rebbe is still speaking. That means the Rebbe knows that I still have enough time to make it to the bris. So I'm not leaving. And he's staying by the sikha till the end of the sikha. He stayed by the sikha all the way till the end, till after the Rebbe left. It was already after 4:30. Time he got to his car was about 4:35. 15 minutes left to Shkia, has to get to Queens. He gets into his car, he starts rushing. He says, Hashem helped that there was traffic jam beyond, bumper to bumper traffic. And literally, he could not move. He says, and he was so nervous. He has to make it, you don't want to do a bris a day late. And as they're moving slowly, he says, and he went the entire way. He went to the Jackie Robinson Parkway and inching along the Jackie Robinson Parkway. And he went all the way there, came to the shoal where the bris is. It felt like hours for him. And he looked at his watch in the clock in the car. It says 4:41. There's not 4:50. 4:41. 11, it was 8 minutes or something. So how is it physically possible? He does not know, because it was going really slowly. He did not look at the clock even once. He says it's only a miracle of the Rebbe that either the clock stopped or fits sadarach. Literally. So when one puts themselves in such a way. And finally, he came there. It was about 10 minutes before the sun sets, and he runs in and he tells the family, okay, we're doing the bris. And they said, hey, hold on a minute. Everyone's getting ready. The party will start soon, maybe in 15 minutes. He says, no, I have to do a bris right now or I have to go. I can't do the bris. So they brought the baby in. Immediately, within 5 minutes, they started the bris, and the bris was Baruch Hashem done on time. We'll see if the Rebbe needs to come onto a miracle to make the bris on time, we'll come onto a miracle.
Now, who said it should know that's be now? Was it the father? Was it the father who said that's be now?
Rabbi Shane said, let's do it right now. Yes, he has many other stories, because like miraculous stories in such a way.
What is actually Rebbe Shane actually was one
the one driving himself.
Oh.
And in a similar way, I had a great-grandfather of mine, my father's mother's father. His name was Yitzchak Raskin. He was a moyel in Leningrad under communist Russia. And for a while, a long time, he was only moyel in the city of Leningrad because the other moyel was scared to do it. He was eventually arrested and shot by the KGB for exactly doing what he was doing, in charge of the mikvah and doing brisim. But he, yeah, it was Yitzchak Raskin. He was shot by the KGB, and he would do sometimes 7 or 8 bris milas in one day.
And he was the one who was shot by the
KGB, correct. 1938, during the Great Purges, he was shot. And there was many times the mother and father would not be in the house when they do the bris because they were scared to do it, and they would just tell him to be in the house by himself. They would have a grandmother in the house usually, and they would do, the grandmother would let them in. And there was one time, there was somebody, his story is online, the guy who's with him, his name is Galperin, you can see the story online, he says over the story, he says, I was Yitzchak Raskin, and was our 7th, I was there helping him, carrying his bag for him, and it was the 7th bris of the day, and it was almost sunset, and we realized when we came into the house that we left our bag in the previous house, and there wasn't enough time to go back to the old house and get it, and get back before sunset, and he also knows that he's not going to have another chance to do the bris milah. Today's the only chance to do it.
Is this what your great-grandfather did?
Yeah. So we told him, go into the bathroom, see if they have a shaver. And he went into the bathroom, and he found the shaver, and he took out the blade, and he did the bris with the blade, and then he cleaned up the blade and put it back. Right. So it's very important to do a bris specifically by day and to a very strong extent. Let's continue the Gemara. Everyone who goes to the mikvah must go only during the day. One exception is what we spoke about yesterday. Sprinkling the waters of the para aduma, the ashes of the red heifer, someone who is a tamei mace, someone who is impure to a dead body, for them to become pure, they have to be sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer, mixed with water. What is a source that it has to be done by day? There's a source in the Torah. It says the Gemara, Tichriv, as it is written in the Torah, in Parshas Chukas, Vehiza hatar al hatomei b'yom hashlishi v'yom hashvi. Bring it up here on the screen. See pasuk Yites, and the clean means the pure person, the one who is not tamei, shall sprinkle from the ashes of the water on the unclean, on the tamei, and the impure person on the 3rd day and the 7th day. It's not a physical cleanliness; it's a spiritual purity and an impurity. On the 3rd day and the 7th day, the chita b'yom hashvi, and on the 7th day he shall purify him. The chibes begadav, and he should wash his clothes, meaning his clothes were tamei and he should become clean. The Hatzvi-Bais, and he should rinse himself in water. That means a mikvah. The tar ba'erev, and he shall be clean in the evening. So in this pasuk, in this verse, we've seen 2 things: that the sprinkling of the ashes of the para aduma, the red cow, to purify someone, must be on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Day means sunrise to sunset, not nighttime. And washing yourself in water means going to the mikvah, also must be done at the same time that the sprinkling is done. And just like the sprinkling of the ashes are done between sunrise and sunset during the day, so too sprinkling of going to the mikvah can only be done by day. So says the Gemara, as it is written, in Parshas Chukas it says, and one who is pure shall sprinkle the ashes of the red heifer on the one who is impure. And then afterwards they shall go to the mikvah and then become pure in the evening. By Yom Hashvi, on this day, so we learn from there, it must be by day, not by night. The iskash, and we liken conjunction, because they're neighbors in the pasuk, tefillah lahazaya. Immersion in the mikvah is compared to sprinkling the ashes of the para aduma. must only be done by day and not by night. And therefore, that's halacha. Even today, going to the mikveh is done by day, except for the one example that we have now, which then they go to the mitzvah, they go to the mikveh by night. In many other mitzvahs, which all have to be done by day, and we learn from this. For example, making the soita drink the waters has to be done by day. All the karbanis in the Beis Hamikdash were only done by day.
Oh, yeah. Gemara breakfast.
I'm cutting the oimer has to be done by night, but they brought the carbon by day. And in the Beis Hamikdash, they would burn limbs of the leftover limbs from the karbanis, so we're not burned by day, but it has to all be brought by day. Davening musaf has to be done by day, can't be done after it gets dark. Shaking lulav and esrog also has to be done during the daytime. Blowing shofar has to be done by day. All these things, saying Hallel, reading the Megillah, all these things we all learn from these halachas, from this Mishnah, that general, the mitzvahs, which are praising Hashem, like Hallel, like Megillah, all have to be done by day. Mitzvahs which are done by night are specific mitzvahs like Sfiras HaOmer, counting the Omer, which has to be done by night. Time is 11:32. We'll continue now a little bit with the idea of the Mitteler Rebbe's Day of Redemption, Yud Kislev. It's interesting, the city where the Mitteler Rebbe sat in jail was in the city of Vitebsk. And the building where he sat in jail wasn't a jail, was not a prison. It was a house that was a government-owned house that the Mitteler Rebbe was treated there very respectfully. He was taken for questioning. He wasn't treated like Alter Rebbe as a common criminal, where Alter Rebbe was in Shpalerka. Not Shpalerka, that was Friedrich Rebbe in Peter Paul Fortress. Two different places, actually, two different prisons, two different times he was arrested, the Alter Rebbe in Petersburg. But rather, he was in a house in the city of Vitebsk. And later on, the Rebbe Maharash actually bought that house where the Mitteler Rebbe sat in prison, and he turned it into a shul. Turned it into a shul for Chassidim.
Good luck, shul.
And now here is a old Chabad shul in the city of Vitebsk. So I'm not sure if it's that building where the Mitteler Rebbe sat in prison or not. But this happened last year, where they managed to get the shul back from the government, and they renovated and they dedicated the shul, this shul in Vitebsk. They're renovating. Anyway, so that's the idea. So I'm not sure if it's that shul, but it was the building where the Mitteler Rebbe sat in prison was bought by the Rebbe Marash, the fifth Rebbe, and was turned into a Chabad shul. I'm not sure if it's that exact shul. So we'll discuss a little bit about the arrest and the redemption of the Mitteler Rebbe and how it differed from the Alter Rebbe and the differences, some of the differences between the Alter Rebbe and the Mitteler Rebbe when they were both imprisoned. Right in the beginning of the show, we all said this, chapter 55 of Tehillim, Pada v'shalom nafshi, my soul was redeemed in peace. When the Alter Rebbe was in prison, he said a lot of Tehillim. He said Tehillim, the way is divided according to days of the week. Tehillim is divided according to days of the week and days of the month. Some people say that the weekly day, most people say the monthly day. Padam Shalom Nafshi is in the day of the week of Tuesday, and Alter Rebbe was saying this verse of Tehillim when he received the news that he's going free. He still finished the chapter. But Padam Shalom Nafshi means my soul is redeemed in peace. The Mitteler Rebbe, he was saying Tehillim for Yud, day 10 of the month, which is today. And he was also up to this pasuk, this verse, Pada v'shalom nafshi, my soul is redeemed in peace. He also was told the news that he's going free from prison on the 10th.
I believe you're on mute.
Interesting. I'm mute. I don't get back onto here. How about now?
Fine.
Now it's I'll get back into here. Not sure what happened. You can have a piece of cake. Can you hear me or see me? I don't know. I can't hear or see anybody else. I hope.
Yeah, we see you and hear you.
Interesting. Okay, I can't see or hear anybody else. I'm not sure what's on the screen, but all is good.
Pada v'shalom nafshi is on the screen.
Okay. Okay, so we'll discuss a little bit about the arrest and the liberation of the Mitteler Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe was a Rebbe for 14 years. There's an old saying by Hasidim, grandfather heard this, so the Mitteler Rebbe was a Rebbe for 10 years. But it doesn't add up the years, because he was born he became a Rebbe in the year 1812, or 1813 rather, after the Alter Rebbe passed away. And in the year 1828, Mitteler Rebbe passed away. It comes out to be 15 years, right? From 1813 to 1828. However, for many of the years, there were investigations and accusations against the Mitteler Rebbe, and he was not able to act in a free manner. So it says during those years, he was very subdued, sort of, in how he was spreading Chassidus and leading the Chassidim. And there's stories that are brought down, the Friedrich Rebbe writes down about different silent spies and loud spies, which the government tried sending to find accusations. Now, the Alter Rebbe was one of the most loyal citizens in the Tsar, to the Tsar. The Alter Rebbe helped the Tsar win against Napoleon. That was for a different reason. The Alter Rebbe held Napoleon was very harmful for the spiritual good of the Jewish people. The Alter Rebbe was no fan he wasn't saying the Tsar was good, but for the spiritual life of the Jewish people, the Tsar was a lot better. And for the Alter Rebbe's help, Alter Rebbe sent the Chassid of Moshe Meislish to be a spy on the French. Famous story, perhaps we'll go through it another time. And due to the Alter Rebbe's efforts, several forts were not conquered by the French. And the Alter Rebbe was given the title Ezrach Nichbal Dereis, of an honored citizen for generations. Among the benefits of an honored citizen was that he cannot be arrested like a common criminal. If you are arrested, you're arrested in an honorable way. Whatever, it's a privilege, no?
Yeah.
And so the Mitteler Rebbe had that title. What? How do you say it in Russian? I don't know how to say it in Russian. I mean, the original certificate is out there online. You can find it if you want. The original certificate is out there. You could probably read it, what it sounds like. Mitteler Rebbe, he was a Rebbe to move to the town of Lubavitch after the passing of the Salkus of the Alter Rebbe. The government prepared, sent notices to all the cities on the route the Mitteler Rebbe was going to travel to Lubavitch from Kremenchuk, that to welcome to give assistance, welcome the Mitteler Rebbe, change his horses for him. So Mitteler Rebbe is very respected. Now, how could the Mitteler Rebbe be under investigation? And Cholamayt Sukkos, Chassidim heard in Vitebsk, they heard that the Vitebsk was a capital of the region, although now Vitebsk and Lubavitch are in two different countries. Then was all, one's Belarus and one is Russia, but they're all close enough. It's a capital of the region. So why would the Mitteler Rebbe be under investigation? For what? By Shmini Atzeres, the rumors were confirmed. And the secretary of the regional governor, her name was Chanovsky, who, as my grandfather says, was an illegitimate son of the Tsar, and that's why he was sent to Vitebsk. Yeah, the Tsar had several legitimate sons and illegitimate sons. He made them governors of different areas.
Well, was that way with many kings and many kings actually
Correct.
that way.
Right? It says, as Alter Rebbe told Rebbe Baruch of Mezhebush, Fanya Noya Fanya Gazlan, there was Nishmaser of Echad. Fanya, which is the Tsar, Fanya is Peter. Fanya Noya, Fanya Gazlan. He's immoral, I say, and he's a thief, but he doesn't cover over the oneness of Hashem. Shmini Atzeres, the rumors were confirmed, and the secretary of Chanovsky, he met with Chassidim in the city of Vitebsk, and he told them that the following Thursday, the Minister of Justice in St. Petersburg is going to sign a warrant for search and arrest of the Mitteler Rebbe. And what ended up happening is the Minister of Justice didn't just say that the Mitteler Rebbe should be detained. He says that he should be brought from Lubavitch to Vitebsk and interrogated in the city of Vitebsk. No one knew what the charges were. No one knew who had slandered the Rebbe. They couldn't start preparing a defense without even knowing what the charges were. All they could do was meet with the Minister of Justice and demand that the Mitteler Rebbe not be treated like a common criminal. He should be allowed to travel by himself in his own wagon. And he agreed to that. And the Mitteler Rebbe traveled by himself in his own horse and chariot. When he traveled together with many, many Chassidim, and he stopped in many cities along the way. Several non-Jewish, very wealthy landowners traveled along with Mitteler Rebbe. They traveled, had great respect for the Mitteler Rebbe. The government also agreed that the minister agreed that the Mitteler Rebbe could travel slowly due to his health, and usually took 3 days instead it took 2 days. Sure enough, came a Sunday after Sukkot, and the soldiers came to the Mitteler Rebbe's house and they searched the house from top to bottom. And slowly they started understanding what happened. The Alter Rebbe passed away, was in Salik, running away from Napoleon. He escaped from Liadi, and all his possessions were left behind in Liadi. And everything was burned to the ground. The Mitteler Rebbe was left with nothing. And any money that they did have was used for the traveling cost. There were 90 wagons that left Liadi together with Mitteler Rebbe, 90 wagons of people. And the Chassidim knew this. And when the Chassidim in Lubavitch asked the Mitteler Rebbe to settle there, he began to travel to Lubavitch, and every city on the way he stopped, and Chassidim generously gave whatever they could, even though they themselves were very poor and destitute, Maimid, to funds dedicated to help the Rebbe. When he came to Lubavitch, the Rebbe had a few thousand rubles. And he decided to divide the money between all the members of his large family, who all were very in dire poverty. And he appointed a chassid, Pinchas Reizes, Shlomo Freidis, from Zaman Reizes, to divide the money. Many years later, Pinchas Reizes passed away, and unfortunately did not have any children. Famous story of the Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe says, what he wants, I can't do for him. Meaning, have children. He can't be blessed with children, but he should have a refuah shlema. He was not well, and he was far away. Alter Rebbe blessed him with a refuah shlema. And so the Pinchas Reizes did not have children, and he had a nephew who inherited all of his possessions in the city of Shklov. And this nephew was a very well-known crook. And so now we got an inheritance from Pinchas Reizes. He tried maximizing all the money that he had. So we started going through Pinchas Reizes' papers. Maybe there's some IOU notes. And he found a letter from the Mitteler Rebbe where he thanked Pinchas Reizes for taking the job to divide the money that he collected on the way to Lubavitch. And so this nephew of Pinchas Reizes, he went to the Mitteler Rebbe right away and he demanded blackmail. Pay me a huge amount of money and I'll give you back this letter. And if you don't give me a big amount of money, I'm going to use this letter to slander you to the Russian government that you're, trying to collect money illegally. Obviously, the Mitteler Rebbe said, absolutely not. I did nothing wrong collecting money to give to my family, which is poor. There's nothing wrong. And you're not going to, as all the Rebbeim said, the Rebbe Rashab said, the Rebbe said, the Friedrich Rebbe says, you can't scare a schneerson. We are not people which are scared, right? We are not people which run away. They don't run away. Even if they got 4 warnings of arrest, they never ran away. Schneersons are not scared. And he left and he thought of another plan. He had no connections with the government. He needed a partner, someone with the right connections. And he found it. The Mitteler Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Sinsterna, was from a very wealthy family in Vitebsk. It's called the Segal family.
She was a Levi, right?
Correct. They were very wealthy. This is Alter Rebbe's Rebbetzin. They were Talmidei Chachamim, big Baal Tzedakah, gave a lot of tzedakah, but they were also bitter Misnagdim.
Yeah, exactly.
Opponents to Chassidus. And they had a grudge against the Alter Rebbe. Personal grudge. Right?
But then he married into their family, right?
They wanted to marry into the Alter Rebbe's family, but they were turned down. And they offered large amounts of money, and they were turned down.
Wait. Who wanted to marry into?
Other members of the family.
Other
Members of the family wanted to marry into the Alter Rebbe's family.
even though it was distracted. Even though they were
Correct.
distracted?
Right.
Oh, wow.
And whatever. So there were some people in that family who had personal vendettas, and they had connections. They were a wealthy family. They had connections with the governor, Chanovsky or Chavnatsky, however you pronounce his name. But how could they take an innocent letter and slander? So they added a forgery to the letter of the Mitteler Rebbe. It said over there, Gimel alafim, Medal alafim, 3,000 or 4,000 rubles was collected. And they added on the letter Kuf, 100. 103,000 or 104,000 rubles were collected. So suddenly, instead of the Mitteler Rebbe collecting 3,000 or 4,000 rubles, he collected 104,000 rubles. That's a lot of money.
So his own relatives from marriage did that, right?
Correct. Distant relatives from marriage. Meaning it was a relative of Princess Reizes who did it, and his Alter Rebbe's own relatives, Mitteler Rebbe's own relatives. Correct. Mitteler Rebbe's own second cousin is the one who did this. Correct. And then they came with a very ridiculous type of accusation that how could the Mitteler Rebbe collect such a huge amount of money in such a short trip? It must be that he's planning a revolution against the Tsar. And the trip was an attempt to rile up the masses against the Tsar. And they made up the same accusations as the Mitteler Rebbe, like the Alter Rebbe sending money to Turkey, because he was sending money to Eretz Yisrael. And he's trying to bribe the Sultan to go to war against Russia. And they had a whole bunch of other ridiculous things. They said that the shul in the Lubavitch is the same size as the Beis HaMikdash, and they want him, it wasn't, but they actually, during the arrest of the Mitteler Rebbe, they sent messengers to measure the shul in Lubavitch, how big it is, because he wants to make his own independent kingdom. He wants to finance a war. Right, so the Mitteler Rebbe is serious to overthrow the Tsar. Now, of course, as Chassidim, we all know that nothing by the Rebbe happens by chance. It's all from above in heaven. Why was there an accusation against the Mitteler Rebbe, which even down here, any normal country would never run, would never go? Right, where if a place where you're innocent until proven guilty, would never, this would never fly. And Mitteler Rebbe was arrested, very serious accusations for so long. It's for the same reasons the Alter Rebbe was arrested. That the Mitteler Rebbe, he spread Chassidus exponentially, much, much more than the Alter Rebbe ever spread. As it's known, the Mitteler Rebbe was Bina of Chassidus. Alter Rebbe is Chachma, the Mitteler Rebbe is Bina. Bina is much greater than Chachma, right? In one sense. Chachma is the idea. Chachma is general Chassidus. Chassidus HaKlalis. Chachma is a flash of inspiration to figure out, let's say, as a scientist trying to figure, a mathematician trying to figure out a problem for years, and suddenly he gets an idea. And he says, wait, if someone tries talking to him, don't interrupt me, I'm trying to develop this idea. Right? You can have someone playing a chess game, he comes up with a new idea. This is called Chachma, flash of inspiration. Bina is taking that and developing it. Mitteler Rebbe's idea of Bina, Rechova Sanar. Mitteler Rebbe's Chassidus is very much bekamus, at length. You could say a mimer for many hours at a time. One time, as I understand correctly, 18 hours in a row, the Mitteler Rebbe said a mimer. At length, depth of the Mitteler Rebbe's Mamarim is extremely deep. Imre Bina, Pirush Hamilas, Shari Oira, many Mamarim of the Mitteler Rebbe are very, very deep. He does have simpler Mamarim as well. He wrote Mamarim for different types of Chassidim. And very wide, they cover a lot of ground as well. It's called Rechova Sanar, the width of the river. And just like by a river, this is from the Mitteler Rebbe in Nemes of Torah Ar and Shar Yichud. He calls it the Aleph-Beis of Chassidus, or the key to Chassidus. That just like in a river, you look at it, the top, it looks very calm. If you go into the depth of the river, that suddenly becomes very fast and it's a very strong current. Same thing when it comes to learning the Pnimis HaTorah, the inner part of Torah, there's a surface, but deep down under the surface, you just go a little bit deeper, and there's a tremendous amount of chachma, of wisdom, in a very strong manner. And the Mitteler Rebbe spread Chassidus exponentially, not just in the Mamarim he said, in what he did as well. He, as we said yesterday, the story of Yitzchak Moshe of Yassi, that every chassid on the way to Lubavitch had to stop in every single town and city on the way and spread Chassidus. Try finding as many people as possible to make them to Chassidim, teach them Chassidus. Chassidus is becoming very powerful, and all the big strongholds traditionally, where there are opponents to Chassidus, Chassidus is becoming very powerful, very strong. People were actually learning Hashem, learning the Mitteler Rebbe demanded a very high level of perfection from his Chassidim. It's a story. Mitteler Rebbe's one of his famous lines is when two Chassidim meet on the street, they should discuss Yichud Eilah and Yichud Tata. Yichud Eilah is the unity of Hashem, hinted to in the pasuk of Shema, where Hashem is creating everything, so the only existence is Hashem, and Yichud Tata, the lower type of unity, and it's hinted to in the pasuk of Baruch Shem Kol Mechus Elaylam Va'ed, where everything brings out the unity of Hashem, and that's what they should be discussing. It says there was once a chassid of the Mitteler Rebbe. He had a mimer in his pocket, and he's walking down the street, and it was like the weather the last few days over here, unlike those who are enjoying the beautiful weather of Florida, nice and rainy here. And it was raining very much, and the roads were not paved. Back then, there were, I think, less than 100 miles of paved roads in entire Russia during the times of the Mitteler Rebbe. They were far behind many, the rest of the world, yeah. And so the chassid of the Mitteler Rebbe was walking down the street it was raining, and he slipped and he fell into a big hole in the ground, a big puddle of mud, quagmire full of mud, and he couldn't get himself out. So what does a chassid of the Mitteler Rebbe do when he's stuck in the mud? He took out of his pocket the mimer of the Mitteler Rebbe, and he started learning it. And he's reading the mimer of the Mitteler Rebbe in the rain, while sitting in the mud. goes by some other people on the street, some other chassidim, and they see a sight in front of them. What do they see in front of them? They see a chassid sitting in the mud up this deck, learning a mimer. And they're very surprised. There was another story in the town of, during the times of the Mitteler of the Alter Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe used to learn with a great chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Aaron Strasheller, one of the greatest chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. Mitteler Rebbe was learning with him together. And there was a story that two chassidim were walking together and they were discussing. This is when Alter Rebbe was in the town of Liozna, and they were discussing chassidus together. And it was raining, so they walked into a nearby building to shelter themselves from the rain. And they kept on discussing chassidus. And when it stopped raining, they walked out. And then, to their horror, they realized that the building they walked into was a cloister, was a church. And they were horrified. And the word got around, and it came to the Mitteler Rebbe. And the Mitteler Rebbe heard about it. He gave a smirk, like he laughed. And they didn't walk in on purpose, and they're even discussing chassidus even over there. Aaron Strasheller got very upset, and Mitteler Rebbe was laughing about it, and that was the beginning of their disagreement. Later on, Aaron Strasheller thought that he should become the successor of the Alter Rebbe, etc.
Well, you can see was the topmost student of the Alter Rebbe.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the Mitteler Rebbe was being brought to Vitebsk for questioning. So hundreds of chassidim. So the word is getting out. It wasn't a secret that he's going to be arrested. It wasn't that they're coming in the middle of the night, like a surprise. So hundreds of chassidim came to Lubavitch for a Shabbos. On that Shabbos, Mitteler Rebbe did not change his behavior at all. It was like a regular Shabbos. And he said chassidus for many hours as he would in any regular Shabbos. There was a great uproar in the region. Jews as well as non-Jews began making preparations, knowing the Mitteler Rebbe will be traveling on his own to the city of Vitebsk for detainment and arrest and questioning. And in every city, they arranged huge crowds to welcome the Mitteler Rebbe, Jews and non-Jews. And the police realized that it wasn't a simple matter. It wasn't just we're detaining another regular citizen. This is something very serious. When the officers arrived in Lubavitch, they went straight to the home of the Mitteler Rebbe. They stayed for about an hour, and they spoke with great respect to the Mitteler Rebbe. Very unlike when the Alter Rebbe was arrested in Liozna 25 or 27 years before, where they hit the Alter Rebbe's Rebbetzin in the face and she lost a tooth. Here they spoke very politely. And they politely asked the Mitteler Rebbe to travel with him to the city of Vitebsk to be questioned by the governor. He could arrange his own transportation, travel slowly due to his health. They preferred to leave that day and travel until Liozna, and Monday to go to Vitebsk. But the Mitteler Rebbe said that he wants to travel that day to a closer town called the Brumishel. So on Sunday, the Mitteler Rebbe traveled to the Brumishel, on Monday to continue to Liozna, and Tuesday to reach Vitebsk. Vitebsk is not that far from Lubavitch. It's about an hour car ride, I think. Maybe an hour and a half. My father was in Lubavitch, and he met a bus that came from Vitebsk, and he met someone from the bus, and he asked, "What's your Jewish name?" And he says, "I don't have one." He says, "You don't have a bris?" And he says, "No, I don't have a bris." She says, "What are you waiting for to have a bris?" He says, the shliach in my area is pushing me to get a bris, shliach in Vitebsk, but I'm waiting for a sign from above. He says, "Great, here's your sign. We're in the city of Lubavitch. Make sure to get a bris." And he started dancing with him on the street in Lubavitch.
It's with your father, right?
My father.
And your grandfather was the one actually.
Great-grandfather who made the bris, correct.
Let's see, with the blade, actually, the
Correct.
razor blade, you said, right?
Right. And he started dancing with him, and they made kulas, they made somersaults on the street in Lubavitch. About a month later, my father got a message from the shliach in the city of Vitebsk that the person he met in the street, he made a bris. He sent them a video message to say, "Thank you for pushing me to make the bris." Right. So the Mitteler Rebbe was sitting in jail in the city of Vitebsk. Now, after the wagons left Lubavitch, 4 investigators arrived. Some of them were Jews who were able to speak Yiddish. They mingled with the people of Lubavitch, trying to find out information about the Mitteler Rebbe. Interviewed all the non-Jewish landowners in the area, and everyone spoke only highly positively about the Mitteler Rebbe. Of course, they searched the Mitteler Rebbe's house, every paper trying to find evidence The only thing Mitteler Rebbe is trying to plot treason against the government, and the only thing they found was the Mitteler Rebbe has lots of calculations how much tzedakah is being given to the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. And they confiscated these papers to have it translated to Russian. And of course, they measured the Sholem Lubavitch to see if it's as big as the Beis HaMikdash, and they realized it does not resemble the Beis HaMikdash at all. Right. We'll maybe continue with the story of the arrest and the release of the Mitteler Rebbe from prison. But when Mitteler Rebbe is released from prison, it's a sign that from heaven, this decree is no longer existent. So all the limitations of spreading Chassidus are no longer there. Only limitations of spreading Chassidus come from within ourselves. But we don't want to do it on our own. We hold ourselves back. But the limitations from the world are no longer there. And on the contrary, people are very thankful and happy and says, why don't you tell us more? Tell us more. So Shkoyach, thank you for joining. It should be a good Yom Tiv, a happy holiday. And Shkoyach, thank you for joining. And it should only be Simchas. And it's a day of redemption. So a redemption for every single Jew who's in captivity, wherever they are in the world. Okay, Shkoyach.